Now leaders are panicked because they haven't prioritized the truth about their workplace, and they're in a hurry to address it. And I think that that can cause some problems as well, because this is something that you can't really rush through. You have to do it in a certain very thoughtful and responsible way, and also in a consistent way that you can sustain.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the KTS Success Factor podcast for women, where we talk about challenges senior female leaders face in being happy and successful at work. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah E. Brown.
My guest today is Jennifer Brown. She's an award-winning entrepreneur, a dynamic speaker, and a diversity and inclusion expert. She's the founder and CEO of Jennifer Brown Consulting, a strategic leadership and diversity consulting firm that coaches business leaders worldwide on critical issues of talent and workplace strategy. Jennifer is a passionate advocate for social equality who helps businesses foster healthier, more productive workplace cultures. Her book, Inclusion, Diversity, the New Workplace, and the Will to Change, which came out in 2016, will inspire leadership to embrace the opportunity that diversity represents and empower advocates to drive change that resonates in today's world. Jennifer's second book, How to Be an Inclusive Leader, is a shortlist OWL Award and Nautilus Book Award winner in the business category, and provides a step-by-step guide for the personal and emotional journey we must undertake to create an inclusive workplace where everyone can thrive. Welcome, Jennifer. I'm so glad to have you.
Well, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So what is the biggest challenge you're helping organizations face today, and what might be the symptoms of those challenges?
Yeah, I think if you had asked me that question a couple months ago, my answer may be a little bit different. It's been a very dynamic and challenging space lately, but it always has been. It always has been. I mean, it's the continual conversation for years has been, how do we attract and retain the best talent? How does that talent then service and serve a diversifying world of customers and clients? And then, they ask me, is it a problem that our leadership lacks diversity, lacks visible and invisible diversity, whether that's ethnic diversity, gender diversity, LGBTQ, all the other aspects? And so there has been a lot of work on the part of companies that quote unquote get it for a long time to focus on representation, on demographics in the workplace, on inclusive cultures where all kinds of talent can truly thrive. And that's always been the work. But right now, with the pandemic first and then with the Black Lives Movement, there is a whole conversation around, what does this now look like? If we bring it to the forefront and really focus on it, how can we hold ourselves accountable, and how can we make faster and more meaningful change around specifically representation? And I think that's an exciting window for us, because all of a sudden we have sort of wind at our backs in terms of willing participants in actually doing the real work that's going to make a difference.
Mm-hmm. So what's the biggest mistake your clients make before they start working with a professional like you?
There's a lot of different, there's kind of witting and unwitting, a lot of unwitting mistakes, sort of willful blindness, I call it, to the problems and challenges that are faced by our workforce. I know this because I constantly do focus groups, interviews. I collect data about how people are feeling in workplaces, and I feed it to executive leadership teams who've hired us. Mm-hmm. But I think there's still a denial, historically anyway, a denial around, well, this can't be happening, not at our company. We're good people. We have a great culture. We have tons of diversity in our workforce. There's a lot of, I think, excuses that are made that people don't really want to look at themselves and their organization as having challenges, because they think that reflects poorly on them. Mm-hmm. And I think we've got to get past that in order to really tackle a lot of what we're talking about. There could also be lawsuits. There could also be, I mean, right now, there are demands for resignations of senior leaders who have not been accountable for this stuff in the past. There's a lot of churn around people like communities of identity finding their voice in the workplace and really using it right now. And so, to me, not a lot of this stuff, as I said, is surprising. It's the fact that it hasn't been listened to in the past. And I think now leaders are panicked because they haven't prioritized the truth about their workplace and they're in a hurry to address it. And I think that that can cause some problems as well, because this is something that you can't really rush through. You have to do it in a certain very thoughtful and responsible way, and also in a consistent way that you can sustain.
Mm-hmm. So what's a free and actionable tip that you can give my audience to better understand and address this challenge now?
Well, I would say that if you haven't been listening to colleagues about, your workplace culture, if you are totally on one side of the equation where you're clueless about who might be not bringing their full selves to work and why, that's something we need to get curious about, both individually as colleagues and also as organizations. And then, the listening right now and the humility that we all need to have to literally listen and take on board what we're hearing and what we're learning, and then have the courage and the commitment to shift things in response to that. That's literally really what it comes down to. And yet, I was able to say that in about 10 seconds, but it's much harder than it sounds because there's a lot of obstacles along the way for people, both emotional and also structural.
I can imagine this is a really emotional journey.
Yes, very emotional. I think the reflection, particularly on this sort of reflection on our own biases and our own what we've missed in the past, or what we haven't looked at, or what we've assumed is okay and working fine. I think the overwhelm of hearing, in our personal relationships, in our working relationships, maybe we're hearing things that we never knew. And then organizationally, the feedback is really difficult and not very favorable to a lot of institutions right now. But as I said, this is not a surprise. This is a conversation I've been in for a long, long time. And so it's not new information. I think that's a really important thing to understand. It's just that it's coming to people's attention in a different way right now. And I personally recommend that we all are grateful, because you cannot run an organization without understanding what gets in people's way of feeling engaged and feeling like they belong, and therefore then being able to be creative and contribute in their best way.
Mm-hmm. So what's a valuable free resource you can share with my audience to help them understand this challenge now?
Yeah, I mean, both of my books are having a renaissance right now because I think they're very relevant to, okay, we understand there's a need for change, but how do we change in kind of practical and tactical terms? So I tend to focus on that because I'm a consultant. So my first book is called Inclusion from 2017. And then my second book is from last year, 2019, called How to Be an Inclusive Leader. And then there's a free inclusive leader assessment that goes along with the second book. Yeah, and I would recommend everybody take it. It's 10 minutes. You can provide the link. And it will give you a PDF as a result of taking the assessment that helps you understand where you are in the inclusive leader journey that I outline in my second book. And it will give you a good start around your own work, because it has to really start with each of us. In order to shift systems around us that we're a part of, we need to kind of go inward before we go outward. And so that was kind of the thrust of my second book, to provide a model for self-reflection and a step-by-step process that demystifies what does inclusion mean, how do I demonstrate it, how do I live it, and then how do I become a leader of the inclusive leadership conversation, which is sort of the ultimate advanced practice of it.
And we will include the link to that assessment in the show notes. So thank you very much for that. So Jennifer, what's a question that I should have asked you about this topic that will help my audience take action? Appropriate action at this point, as you say. And then would you answer the question?
Yes. So the one action is to evaluate your own knowledge of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to begin your, reading journey, listening journey. I think so much of media that we absorb is about our identity, because it's just the world we live in and what we're attracted to. So the exposure that we need to give ourselves to different lived experiences is such a critical part of our learning. And then, eventually, once we feel equipped with some of that, then we move into action. But it's the learning piece, the listening piece, the humility to what you don't know is such an important part of kind of the mental and emotional game of this work. And then the whole question of now what do I do with that is something that's I represent in the book with a lot of ideas.
Oh, great. Great. Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for being with me. I'm going to take this humility and listening with me for the rest of my day today.
Thank
you. Thank you so much for talking with me and my listeners.
Absolutely. Happy to do it.
Thanks for listening to the KTS Success Factor podcast for women. If you like what you are hearing, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate us, and leave a review. And if you would like more information on how we can help women in your organization to thrive, then go to www.sarahebrown.com. You can sign up for our newsletter, read show notes and learn more about our podcast guests, read my blog, browse through the books, or contact us for a chat. Goodbye for now.